Hello and welcome to another episode of eBay Scavengers. This is episode number 50 on ebayscavengers.com. I'm Ryan. I'm here with my partner Jay.
Hello.
Who's not going to say anything.
Can't people see me? So this week we're going to talk about something that people are sending questions in, and that's like accounting. And I think that for a lot of eBay sellers, us included, eBay is like this thing where you're at home and you're just like selling things online, and then people send you money, and it all just seems really simple. It's like if you're doing,
hobby.
It's like if you're doing a yard sale,
right? And
it's like free money, and it's great. Okay, let's first say we are not tax attorneys, we aren't accountants, we aren't the IRS. This is how we've dealt with this tax stuff. Because our problem was that after about 3 years or so, we realized that we were going to make in this 1 year way over $20,000, which number one is amazing for us. But number two, the problem is that the Congress had just passed a new law where PayPal had to notify the IRS anytime anyone made more than $20,000. So that means that if you were not declaring that money, that they were going to declare it for you.
Right. You had no choice in the matter.
And for us, that was a problem. We found out about this like halfway through the year that we hadn't been saving money in the taxes. So we were like, holy moly, we got to start thinking of this like a real business, and we have to actually start thinking about deducting expenses.
Right. So the whole idea behind any kind of small business is you have your gross amount of money you bring in. But you know this as an eBay seller, you have expenses. You have eBay fees, PayPal fees, shipping, all those things that you pay for, the price you pay for merchandise.
Yeah, it's printer ink. You can expense it's gas when you drive around for a yard sale. You can expense your food when you're, having lunch while you're doing yard sales.
So the idea is your gross income and your net income are different. So your net income is everything after expenses that the IRS is going to tax you on.
Right. So basically think of yourself, or we had to think of ourselves like, any big time business person, like they have their gross revenue that they make, but then they expense everything, and then they only pay taxes on a much smaller portion of that. That's their declared income.
Right.
So our thing was, okay, so we sell all this stuff on eBay, we make a bunch of money, and we know we have these expenses. How do we figure that out?
Right. There's like so many, transactions of your shipping. How are you going to add that up at the end of the year? Man,
honestly, we weren't prepared for this. So I guess this was about 3 years ago we figured all this out. So the first thing we did was, okay, well, let's go to an accountant/bookkeeper. So we asked around. Someone has recommended this lady, and we went to her and we told her we had this eBay store, and she understood it, but had never dealt with eBay. So we were like, can we just give you our info and you like do the bookkeeping for us? And it was a disaster because they didn't know how to do it, and they were charging us way too much money.
Yeah.
It was not
horrible.
She was thinking that we were like the corner store, down the street, like a brick and mortar store, and that's the money she was charging us. And man, if that's how much people pay for accounting, it's crazy.
Oh, it was insane.
So we fired her, said, "Yep, no, thank you." So because we sell online, we saw if there was an online solution. So we actually found this place called Outright. So it's outright.com, and we'll put a link to this on the blog post. And we aren't trying to shill for them, so it's nothing for them. We're just telling you our experience with them. And they seem to be specifically designed to help people who sell online, mainly eBay and Amazon and Etsy.
Yeah, so the idea behind Outright is you import all your accounts that you use, whether it's your, personal checking account plus your eBay account plus any credit cards you have. You just log into those through Outright, and it Outright imports that data.
Right. And so number one is, if you're selling online and buying online, then you have to be pretty comfortable with how all that works. And you have to trust that. So they're definitely sucking in all of your financial data, and they only can access the output. They can't get into your accounts and do anything. So, we didn't feel worried like they're going to start, someone was going to hack in and then be able to start pulling money out of our PayPal account, because it's not
right
working like that. But the cool thing is that once you do that, they have tools that start to help you identify what money is an expense and what money is a profit. And you basically teach the system. So once I tell it anything from Goodwill is always going to be an expense. So anytime we ever buy with our credit card at Goodwill, it labels that as an expense.
Right. So the idea, and just a disclaimer, you could do all this in a spreadsheet.
Absolutely.
It would take you forever, but I have been known to do that myself. But the Outright system that we use is great, like Jay's saying, because you start building these categories, like this is merchandise from Goodwill or the thrift store or wherever. Your packing material, that's, always going to be under office supplies, and you start teaching it. So eventually you don't even have to categorize anything, because Outright knows, oh, you bought it from,
because
this place.
we shop at most of the same places. We don't change our habits that much, or we do have habits that it can learn. And so then at the end of the year, Outright can then spit out a worksheet that then we give our tax accountant, who we pay whatever $200 to $400 to do a couple of tax returns, and he loves it, right?
Right. It's great, because basically I print out a spreadsheet that has the breakdown of everything. Basically PayPal sends you, it's called a 1099 miscellaneous, and that has your gross income minus, I think it has minus shipping. They call it shipping income, because you don't really make that money. You're going off of that number. So that number that PayPal gives you, you need to deduct everything, that makes sense, that PayPal doesn't do it for you. That worksheet really breaks it down, because I've categorized all my expenses, all the different things. And we can go into that too, like the things that we do deduct.
Right. And, and just to be clear, so we use, and we have been for the past 8 years or so, we use, a tax guy.
Right, an accountant.
An accountant who does taxes. And I think it's well worth it. I think once you get out of doing a 1040EZ, I don't want to fool with that tax.
You want to do it right.
A software. And the other good thing about having a tax accountant is that he or she knows what's acceptable.
Right.
He knows what expenses is normal for a small business that isn't going to get flagged by the IRS.
Right.
He knows what looks good and what's kosher. So that's why I do it, because I'd be afraid if I was trying to write all this stuff off, I'd be afraid of the IRS was going to think I'm,
right,
scammy and all that.
It's good to have an accountant who looks at your expenses and says, yeah, that totally looks normal for a business of your size,
right. Yeah. And so if you're at the point where you're making over $20,000 a year on eBay, you definitely need to start, thinking about your taxes. And this was the way that we did it in Outright.com. It's free, but then if you want the ability to print or to spit out the worksheets at the end of the year, they make you pay a subscription fee of $10 a month, which ultimately is worth it.
Yeah, for us it's definitely worth it.
Yeah.
There are other programs too out there, but this is what we liked. This is what we tried, and we just stuck with it. So
yeah. And then if we were ever to get audited by the IRS, we have all of the transactions on our credit card statements and our bank statements, and then with these worksheets throughout, right?
Right.
You could then highlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So should we talk a little bit about the kinds of things we expense?
Sure.
Okay, the first thing I wanted to talk about was mileage on your car. Now, you are, according to the IRS, you are supposed to keep track of your mileage that you use for business. The good thing for Jay and I is we pretty much work all the time. Every time we drive into the store to go to the grocery store, we stop at the thrift store. So I keep track of our mileage every month. And the great thing about keeping track of mileage is you take your mileage, say we drove 1,500 miles a month, and then times that times 12 months or however much you kept track of. And then you take that number and it's times the federal mileage standard. You just Google it, you'll find out. I think this year it's like 55 cents. So you get 55 cents for every mile you drive off of your taxes. So that's a really great deduction that everyone should take.
Right. And that's instead of claiming your car as a business expense and then trying to work in any, like your oil changes, and if you have to fix your car and your gas, that's what the government's trying to do, is to cut all that out, and they just give you money off by a mileage. And obviously, you should only be claiming the mileage that you spend doing work.
For business. Yeah. If you're like going to go visit your aunt, well, hell, you'll probably be thrifting while you're there. But yeah, so, it's business travel.
Yep.
Another thing that we expense is obviously office supplies, like shipping supplies and anything like that. Postage, you make what PayPal calls postage income, but obviously that's not income. So all that's expenses. Any insurance you put on the packages, anything like that. Your eBay fees, your PayPal fees, all that stuff gets deducted.
And then also, if you have an office, you can deduct the bills that come across on your office.
Right. So if you have a home office, you want to measure the square footage of that office. And you're going to figure out the percentage. It's kind of a weird thing, but you can roughly figure out the percentage of your utility bills that you use for that. We use our phones and internet for business, so we take that off as well.
And this is why it's so important to consider getting a accountant to help you do your taxes, because they know all this like the back of their hand. These are all standard deductions we're talking about, and they'll just ask you some info and then they'll figure it out. One thing that our accountant told us was that the IRS is pretty strict way about home offices.
Sure.
You just can't say that it's your son's bedroom is the home office because if you have some stuff stored in there, its closet, the office has to be like no bed in there, and it's a
dedicated office.
Yeah, and it's where you actually work. Right. But I would assume if you're doing eBay enough where you're having to actually think about having to pay taxes, then you probably have a room in your house that is full of stuff. It might be a basement. It's where all your storage is, where you do all the shipping. It's business, so the IRS allows you to write all that stuff off.
The other thing I wanted to mention just now, talking about storage, is if you rent a storage space, which we are right now, that's tax deductible.
Yep.
If you, like we had a carpenter build shelves in these 2 sheds, that's deductible. That's like, totally a business. Shelving. We buy these plastic bins that hold a lot of our stuff.
Right.
Take that off.
If you buy a new printer, you can
new
write
camera.
That off. Yep.
There is one big expense where we actually redid a building that became our office building. Yep. Now, this is kind of rare, but we did do it. And the cost of the construction and all that, it wasn't a straight deduction. It's called a depreciable expense, where you deduct the amount. Say you spent $50,000 redoing a building. Well, you can take that off over a certain amount of years.
And that's why when we did an episode on storage, and Mikey was saying he's trying to stay small so everything fits in one room, and I was like, nah, we just went big. Because of this, because we were actually trying to find things that we could use for deductions, and we realized if we expanded and built little small storage sheds on our property, we could write that off, but at the same time, we could grow our business. And that's
Right.
really kind of like when you see those like really rich people, like they know all this stuff.
Right.
They know that the tax system is built for business people, and we're all business people, and it's all there so you can invest in your business.
So yeah, the idea is, because I'm such a frugal person, I like never want to spend money. But I do know, look, if I'm spending money and it's helping my business and I don't have to pay taxes on that money, that's investing in your business.
Yeah, and so, and the idea is, and it seems to work in our case, where like we're investing in our business, we're making more money, and we pay more taxes every year. We do our best to expense things, but ultimately we are paying more in taxes, but we're also making more money too. So it's a net positive. But what you don't want to happen is what we were really scared of that one year was that you don't know how to do expenses, or you have no expenses, and you're having to pay all taxes on all of its profit. That would be a lot of money. You know? Yeah. So, go to the blog. We'll put some links to what we've done. And, we'd love to hear about anyone else's, how they deal with taxes, because I really don't see any eBay blogs really talk about this. It's kind of like the messy stuff that no one likes to talk about because it's not very, it's not always very easy.
And it's not fun to do it at all. Tax time is horrible.
I think Mikey and Wendy, they use a site called Expensify, or it's an app.
Yeah, Expensify, yep.
Where they, keep track of expenses as they happen.
Right.
Where you can take a screenshot with your phone of its receipt, and then you can label it.
Yeah, I tried it, but it doesn't coincide with my other system. But
the problem with that is that then you're having to do everything as they happen, and I guess the reason why I like Outright is because we just spend everything on our credit card, and then
it just shows up in Outright,
and then it just shows up, and then it knows what to do. It's with it because we've told it what things are.
Yeah, so that's the system that works for us.
Yeah. So anyway, that's people were asking us how we deal. It's with our accounting. That's how we deal with it. Go to the blog, ebayscavengers.com. Ask questions because we hope we answer them here, but we'll be glad to talk more about it.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk more in the comments of this post too.
Yeah,
so
and if people have another way that they deal with their taxes doing eBay, we'd love to hear it.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks.